I was 24, married to Prince Charming, with a beautiful baby boy. We lived in the married student housing on the University of Montana campus, and hanging next to our door was a little sign, one of those placards that read, "As long as we are together, the rest will fall in place." It was a cheap memento. His sister gave it to us, and I always thought she must have picked it up at some gift shop in an airport somewhere after a couple glasses of her favorite Barefoot Cabernet. I still remember that morning. I was excited because Montana winters have endurance, and it was finally the heat of summer budding in the air, and life was good. I had been accepted into the nursing program that I wanted, and I could not wait to tell my husband. Finally, all of my hard work had paid off. That evening, I put my son to bed after a story and a bath. 7:30 sharp, like I had done every single night for the last 2 years. And then I waited. And then I started to worry. See, my husband hadn't come home yet, and he wasn't responding to my calls. Finally, well into the night, and after I had made all of the panicked calls that a wife in that situation does, fearing the worst in the face of the unknown, my husband walked through the door. No, he stumbled. He stumbled into the door crying. He was drunk. And I saw the glossy detachment in his eyes, and it was the look that told me there was not going to be reason. There was not going to be logic. Not in our home, not tonight. Only chaos. He went up the 2 flights of stairs, and then he fell to his knees, and it took me a split second to understand, but his intention became clear as he fumbled with the lock and with shaking hands opened the heavy door to our gun safe. This week I was going to tell you about trauma. In fact, I wrote a 12-page speech packed with all kinds of data points and physiological processes. But I recorded it, and it was 30 minutes long. And my message was falling completely flat. So instead, I want to tell you about what I learned this week, and that's how to tell a story. Our assignment was to research a topic and present the information in a speech, right? And man, did I research. And I prepared. And then when I so clearly failed, I had to ask myself why. I think that for people to connect to a message, like the physiological impacts of trauma, they have to first connect to the person or a story. See, I learned today that stories are human, innate, and they're effective. Our brains and our bodies respond to stories viscerally, and they connect us to our audience, and they connect our message to our audience. They're also innate. Story is a language that's universal, and it's human. Think about children and how often they come running through the door and they tell everything in stories. They play in stories. They learn through stories. It is how we communicate. Stories are also effective. I think that if you want to change hearts and minds, if you want to influence the world, or if you want to teach someone, tell a story. I'm wondering now how it felt when I stopped my story at the point that I did. I'm still learning how to do this, but hopefully, if I did it right, you would have been waiting for some kind of a cathartic release, wanting to know what happened next. That was your body. That is the dopamine in your system that builds up as a story reaches its climax. Maybe you would have felt a connection to me personally in the form of empathy, and that's oxytocin. Maybe there was some cortisol pumping as things got really intense and he opened the gun safe door. That is cortisol, and it impacts your memory. And hopefully, if that's the type of things that were happening physiologically in your body, if I did my job right, that response is a human response. It's one that most everyone will experience. In fact, our brains start mapping onto each other as I'm telling that story. It's a pretty amazing physiological process as well. So stories are also effective because they tap into that physiology. And there's a universality about the emotions they can induce, the ways that we all kind of feel a connection over that emotion. Think about sitting in a movie theater and how your heart is racing as if you were the character on the screen. That is a sign of a good story. They're effective also because they tap into the part of our brain that's impactful, that's a long-term memory storage. In summary, today I had intended to talk to you about trauma. I had a lot of information, tons of robust facts, but they were boring, and my speech was long and arduous, and it just fell flat. So instead, I wanted to share with you what I learned through that failure, and that is the power of a good story. That a story is innately human, and that it's effective, and that it helps to create impact for the messages that we're trying to send. In closure, my opening story, I want to say that ended with me having to call my mom. She came and picked up my son, and then I had to call the cops to defuse the situation. I ended up quitting nursing school because I was trying to manage life with a partner who was spiraling at the time. The truly impactful part of that story, though, is that it wasn't until after I left my husband and I was going through my old journals from that time period that I remembered this story. See, my tendency is to deal with trauma by disassociating and blocking things out, and I blocked the entire part of that story out, that entire part of my life out. And to this day, I still tell people that I quit school to take care of my kids. But I've made it my mission to understand how trauma is impacting me and what it's doing in my body, and to my mind and in my spirit. And it's really fascinating, but it is a story for another day. Thanks.